is 14. That is best for me at the age of 14 because at age from 14 to 18, there's a lot of growth. There's a lot of stuff that goes on, especially if the individual is already receiving benefits. And then from 18 to 22, you guys pick it up with the transition team, and then we try to follow them after they exit school to follow them, support them with their benefits. Because as you can imagine, there's tons of benefits issues that happen. If you're paying attention to the news, I try not to watch a lot of it. Tomorrow is going to be our Super Bowl. We call it. We're going to get the new COLA increases. So the numbers I'm giving you tonight are for the numbers that they have for 2025. After tomorrow, I can share the slides and update the slides, share it with your group and your team, and you guys will have the updated numbers as they come out. So let's look at this little chart. We did make this for our families. We're starting to share this with our families, especially at programs and family nights. We get a lot of questions from parents. I'm sure there are some parents on the call. What do I do? Or what do I have to do? We always try to get parents connected to DVR as soon as possible. So as you can see, this chart just is a snapshot of some of the services that the students are eligible for. Um, some of the individuals themselves have already been connected with DVR or they're going to Project Search. And tonight's presentation, I want to focus primarily on giving you guys some information about Social Security benefits, but I really want to focus on the Medicaid waiver section of my presentation. It's very important. I'm trying to share this information, especially for students who are not connected with Social Security. There are some changes coming down the road that I want to make sure families are aware of, so we can nip it sooner rather than later. So we do have two programs that we talk about, SSI and SSDI. The two programs, SSI is based on need. Currently in Delaware, the maximum amount they can receive is 967. In 2024, there was a rule change where they no longer use food to determine the amount of SSI. If they're not using the food and you're not paying a fair share of what we call your living expenses, your SSI can be reduced by 1/3, or the payout would be 644.67 out of that federal benefit rate of 967. For families that do have a child that may be having that 1/3 reduction, charge them rent. You want to charge them rent of at least $342. That will give them that cap where they can say, hey, we know we need to get that 967 amount. I'm charging you rent of 342. We're going to have to increase the SSI so that they can pay their bills. There is a $2,000 resource limit for SSI. There are tons of work incentives. And in Delaware, we are one of the states where if you automatically get approved for SSI, you get Medicaid. For SSDI individuals, it can be based on their own work record. They can be based off a parent's work history. If a parent has passed away, if they have a disability. Some of our students we get, they're receiving what's called auxiliary payments. So the auxiliary payment is based on a minor child. It is not based on disability. I have a lot of family members say, oh, my son or daughter is receiving disability benefits because of A, B, and C. If that child is under the age of 18 and not on SSI directly, that child is receiving an auxiliary payment for a parent. So a lot of times that's when we talked about that age 14 to 18, that age 18 redetermination benefit is going to happen, and we need to understand what does Social Security look like now to determine, are they now, instead of being a disabled child, or can they go into the adult world and become a disabled adult child? So that benefit, we call it DAC, is based on a disability before the age of 22. Right now, the average is about 1537. It is based on work history. There is no resource limit for this particular benefit. There are different work incentives, and this comes with Medicare. There is a 2-year waiting period for Medicare, and there is a 6-month wait for the first payment to come into the deposit of the money that's coming in for this SSDI benefit. So just an overview, like I said, the 2025 federal benefit rate is 967. There is a resource limit of $2,000. This is a needs-based program. It's still based on need. We used to call it a welfare program. If you get this program, you get Medicaid. Student earned income. You're going to hear me talk a lot about the student earned income, especially for any families that are on the call whose child is attending the transition programs or the Project Search, where they get paid. One of the most important things to do if your child is working and they are receiving SSI, we need to make sure that Social Security knows that they are a student. They are working and they're a student. They're actively participating in the 18 to 22 program. Their impairment-related work expenses. If you have an individual who has statutorily blind, a lot of our DVI students, we get what's called the blind work expense for them. And then there are 1619A and 1619B, and I'll explain that in a few slides. So when we look at Social Security or SSI, wages are counted when paid. So we look at pay dates. Some of our individuals get paid weekly, so they may have 5 pay periods or 5 paychecks they submit to Social Security. Some of our individuals get paid every other week. So you may have some months have 2 pay dates, some months have 3. Um, with SSI, since it's based on pay dates, wages earned in 1 month are going to affect the SSI cash benefit 2 months later. I always tell my family members that are on SSI, give me 90 days to show you how you're going to have more income coming into your household. You must report wages to Social Security every month. An expedited reinstatement simply says if you lose your benefit due to you working, you can go to Social Security. They'll do a work review. As long as the disability remains the same, your benefits will get turned right back on. There is a reduced SSI cash benefit when wages are received. I have a lot of families ask me, I don't want my benefit to be impacted. So the first question I ask families is, which benefit are you more concerned about? Are you concerned about the cash benefit or the Medicaid? And 9 out of 10 will say the Medicaid. So I'm here to help you guys understand how we can protect Medicaid. Because really, at the end of the day, you're fighting for 967. That's going to be reduced by wages. So we really have to look at the Medicaid as the key to services in Delaware. Unfortunately, we get a lot of overpayments with SSI. Specifically, if they go over the resource limit of $2,000, overpayments are going to occur. Social Security has been sending them out. There was a law that they put into play. They can only recover about 10% of the federal benefit rate, which is 967. So they'll take $96 out of your check every month until that overpayment is paid back in full. For SSDI, this is an insurance program. It's based on your own work history or the history of a parent. Like I said before, if you're under the age of 18, you are receiving what we call an auxiliary payment. This is not disability related. You would not believe how many family members will tell me, oh, well, Johnny down the road gets an SS or gets a Social Security benefit. Why can't my son or daughter? And I just ask them, I don't know the personal family dynamic, but we can find out from you if you're eligible for the benefit. If they're over the age of 18, they will move over to the world of disabled adult child. 1634 status, what that simply means is if you have a individual who is currently receiving SSI, and due to no fault of their own, they are now collecting off of a parent's work history, and that amount of money is over that 967, or it brings them up above their resources and earnings limit, they can maintain their Medicaid. There's a revolving word tonight we're going to use is Medicaid. We want to protect the Medicaid for everyone that's on the call and students. So benefits vary every month. Average is about 1537. There is no resource limit. It's an all or nothing program. Either you get your SSDI or you don't get your SSDI. This does come with Medicare, like I said, 2 years after waiting. They have similar impairment-related work expenses and work um, trials. They have a trial work period. They have an unsuccessful work attempt. They have to perform what we call SGA amount, which is 1620, EPE and EXR. So if anyone is particularly involved in this particular benefit, it can get very confusing. I would be more than likely to provide more information to the team so they can disperse it to the families if they have anyone on this particular benefit themselves. Um, Unlike SSI, wages for SSDI individuals are earned and we look at pay periods. So sometimes we often cannot tell you how much you've earned in a month because we have to wait to the following month's first paycheck to get a clear understanding and picture of that month's earnings. So, for example, this month, I believe Halloween is on Friday. So, your first check in November is going to include some dates in October. So a lot of times we can't determine your earnings in a month if you're on SSDI until the following month actually gives us our first pay stub. There is a special condition and subsidies eligible for individuals that are receiving SSDI. Like I said, if anyone is on this particular benefit, I will be more than happy to provide more information. Cash benefits are considered unearned income for other programs and waiver limits if you are an SSDI recipient. That can come into play in a couple of slides, specifically for someone who is applying for waiver services, lifespan waiver, pathways to employment, LTSS services. We have to take that unearned income that they're receiving SSDI and put that into the calculation to determine how much money now your son or daughter can earn without affecting their Medicaid waiver programs. So wages from work and how they apply. So let's look at this particular example. So the gross earnings I have is $1,743. So for this example, I'm an SSI recipient. I'm on the top section. I get 1743. Social Security automatically is going to let me take $85 off of my earnings, $20 for a general income exclusion, and then a $65 earned income exclusion. With that, I take the 1743 minus the $85. Now Social Security is only looking at 1658 of my total earnings. After we have that calculation, Social Security now allows us to divide that number by 2. So we divide the 1658 by 2. We now come up with $829. So my total amount of money that the Social Security Administration is looking at, I earned 1743. Social Security is only counting $829 of my countable earned income. The federal benefit rate is 967. I take 967 minus that 829, which gives me a brand new SSI cash benefit of $138. So I earned 1743. I'm getting $138 from my SSI check. My total income for the month is $1,881. So even with work, you can see my SSI was reduced, but I'm still ahead by going to work on an SSI individual. So let's look at the, oh, Lord. Someone on SSDI, the benefit rate they get is 953. The same earnings were attained. They earned 1743. I have to add that 953 because remember, there's no calculation here. I now have $2,496 of total income. I am over SGA in 2025. That number is 1620. So now we have to have a conversation. Is this going to impact my Medicaid? Because I'm not only above SGA of 1620, how is my Medicaid going to be impacted by constantly working at this level? This is obviously, this example is with no work incentives applied. So let's look at work incentives. So work incentives make it very easy for people who have disability to go to work and still receive their Medicare and Medicaid benefits. And in some cases, the benefits from Social Security will continue. So the biggest work incentive we have in Delaware right now is the DART paratransit. If your students or your children are riding a DART paratransit bus where they come and pick you up door to door and you're not reporting that to Social Security every month, you are leaving money on the table because it's a huge work incentive specifically for individuals because DART is very expensive. I think it's $6 one way. That adds up. So on SSI, before they do the calculation, before you divide by 2, you're taking off your DART paratransit costs and then you're dividing by 2. For individuals on SSDI, we take the full amount of your impairment related work expense of DART and we deduct that to make sure you can now become below that SGA level of your accountable earnings. So this is a huge work incentive that a lot of our families simply, and it's complicated, guys. I'm not going to lie to you. It's complicated to get that DART rider log every month, and you got to wait for DART to send it to you, and then you got to submit it to Social Security. Oftentimes, when Social Security gets it the first month, if your individuals are working consistently, they'll just simply go and say, okay, well, she reported $300 of an IRWE this month. We're going to keep that going until they tell us otherwise. I don't like that idea. I try to tell my families report every month so the record is accurate. But a lot of times it takes time for DART paratransit to get that rider log to the family so they can report that to Social Security. I can help with that, by the way. So let's look at this. So these are some work incentives for both programs. The general income exclusion, like I said, the earned income. I have student earned income. I haven't highlighted that. I'm going to go into depth with that. Impairment related work expenses is that DART paratransit. On the SSDI side, same thing here. Some of them are a little different. But let's focus on the student earned income. So the student earned income exclusion is for individuals that are students and they are going to work. This is an SSI only work incentive. And this simply tells them we have to let Social Security know that they're a student and they're participating. I can earn up to $2,350 a month. Nothing happens to my SSI. Nothing. They don't reduce it, they don't do anything. A lot of our Project Search students use this. You must report that you are a student. The maximum per year is $9,460. Income is counted in the month that it's received. So for our Project Search kids that are receiving the stipend, is it every 3 months is the rotation or four? I'm not sure how it is anymore. Angela, do you know that by any chance? I'm not sure if it's three or four because I know they get paid 3 times.
When I was doing it years ago, we did do three rotation. Like it was
Okay,
just three,
right.
but
So
that
every
could have changed.
Okay, so after every rotation, they're receiving a stipend. That stipend has to be reported to Social Security. But if the child is on SSI, that stipend payment in the month it's received does not affect their SSI payment. It does not affect it. 3 months later, they get another stipend payment. You report it to Social Security. It does not affect their SSI payment. The interesting thing about this particular work incentive is it ends at the age of 22 or the student is no longer attending school. So sometimes we have parents will tell us, well, they didn't complete the program, they left 4 months early. Social Security needs to know when the student exited the program or exited school. That's the date that they use, not the age of 22. If you have a child that is not participating in an 18 to 22 program, but they are actively participating in DVR, Social Security needs to know that because that is part of an employment training program where they're either learning how to do a resume, skill setting, they may go on job development tours, they may do all that stuff. We need to make sure Social Security knows that because the rules around regularly attending school are going to be completely different for everybody. So, guys, this is exactly the calculation that we look at. It's an Excel spreadsheet. You put the gross wages in, the countable earnings, if they're equal, it's excluded 100% up to that $2,300. It works like you go to the bank and your check, what do they call it? Your check registry. As you put money in, it just calculates the remaining balance of $9,460. As long as you stay below that number, you're good. If you go over that number, let's say in the month of August, I no longer have remaining balance, then we go to the regular calculation. So $9,000 a year plus your SSI, it's a pretty good work incentive that a lot of families simply do not use. So to be considered that early, you must need it for work. The item or service must be needed because of physical or mental impairment that limits the ability to work. The interesting thing here is the payment must be made by the beneficiary. So if you have a student where DART is being paid for by DVR, DVI, or the school district, we can't use that particular impairment related work expense. Um, Anybody that pays or helps the person pay, the way we document it is a way to get around that little loophole. But it has to come out of the individual's own personal banking or checking account. And it must be reasonable. The cost must be in line with what the typical costs for the service of the individuals and the community. I will share a story with you guys. About 5 years ago, I had a student who required headphones to work. He used headphones through school, everything. And the employer had no problem with it. They said if you need to stay focused using earbuds and earphones, we'll absolutely let him wear it. And then I said to the family, well, does he listen to music or is it just for noise canceling? They said, no, he listens to music on a new iPhone. So I said, well, how much does that cost? How does he download his music? So we got the everything together and he was spending about $150 a month for music for his iPhone and UpCare and all that stuff. You have to get new technology and all that stuff. We submitted that to Social Security and Social Security said, well, does he need it to go to work? I said, absolutely. If he did not have those earphones on and was able to constantly listen to music, he would not be able to be successfully employed. They bid it. So he submits $150 every month because that earphones and that phone allows him to go to work and be independent. So we can always think outside the box. Always think outside the box when it comes to these IRWs, or we call them impairment related work expenses. So here is another example of same person now. They're earned 1543. Same exclusions at $85. Their total income is 1458. Now they have a $200 dart early. So they earned 1543. Social Security is only going to count that 1258. Then they're going to let us divide by two. So from 1543, Social Security is only counting $629 of my wages minus the full benefit rate. My SSI is now 338. So I get the 1543 I earned from work plus the 338. My total income for the month just using a $200 IRWI is 1881. Next example down below, individuals on SSDI, they're earning 1743. They ride the same DART bus, they pay $200 a month. We take that 1743 minus the $200 DART, and you can see what that did. That brought that number below SGA. So now instead of being charged the 1620 amount, they're only earning 1543. They're below SGA for the month. No effect on SSDI cash benefits at all. So two separate programs, same impairment related work expense. You can see how it can affect both payments. So when we talk about wage reporting, I always share this slide. I had to add this stuff on the right. Fax, mail, online, app, carrier, pigeon, whatever's easier for you guys. Social Security may have sent letters out to families. You no longer have to report your wages to Social Security. We're going to obtain them from the employer electronically. That's wonderful, Social Security. But Social Security can only retrieve wage information. They cannot retrieve any impairment related work expenses. So your little mom and pop shops where some of our individuals work, they don't have the federal program in their program to get the wages. So I always encourage families. Social Security says one thing, I encourage you to always report your wages to Social Security, especially if you have any out of pocket medical expenses or IRWs, because they're not going to be able to retrieve that because you guys hold that information. The employer does not. So let's look at medical coverage for both Medicare and Medicaid under the programs. So if you're receiving Medicare, there is a 2-year waiting period from the time that they find that you are now disabled or became eligible for the payment. Part A is free. It's going to be free. Part B premium right now is $185. Anyone on the call who is currently paying a Part B premium, we are estimating that that premium is going to go up to about $206 a month. Part C is what we call a Medicare Advantage plan. Remember, Part A free, Part B traditional Medicare only covers about 80%, so you might need to have a supplement plan. And then Part D is your prescription coverage. Average price right now is about $46.50. We know that's going to go up as well after tomorrow's announcement. With Medicaid, there is no waiting period if you are approved for Social Security SSI. I say this and I repeat it. Medicaid is the key to services in Delaware. This allows you to become eligible for the lifespan waiver, pathways to employment, that Medicare long-term services or LTSS. In Delaware, we use what's called MAGI, and I'm going to get into that in a couple slides. Modified adjusted gross income. And then we have another program that's very underutilized in Delaware. It's called the Medicaid Assistance for Workers with Disabilities. We call it MAUD. So these are comparisons side by side. Medicare SSDI, Medicaid SSI, and what the coverage looks like for both programs. So like I said, key to services is Delaware. is Medicaid. Medicaid is going to open a world of opportunities for your students and your family, especially if they're looking for long-term supports in the community. So let's look at the first one, home and community-based services, or HCBS as we call them. So these are waiver services, ladies and gentlemen, and these were developed to allow the individual to stay in their home, to receive services, instead of having to go into a nursing home or a rehab center, or an institution. And they're available to individuals that have disabilities, intellectual disabilities, physical disabilities, mental health, and substance use disorders. Of that, the first one we're going to look at is the lifespan waiver. So the lifespan waiver is provided, it's a Medicaid approved waiver. It is a home and community-based waiver service. Individuals on this particular waiver, they are supported to be more independent in their homes. They often work in the community, and we support it with that community living. We want them to stay in their community as long as we absolutely can get them in there. One of the services under the lifespan waiver is that day service, support employment. They get personal care. Families are eligible for respite. The list isn't conclusive. You get behavior consultants, home modifications, that community transition and assistive technology. For anyone on the call tonight that is receiving services, use that assistive technology piece for your waiver. A lot of our families struggle with paying assistive technology. If we can get it paid through, by the lifespan waiver or by the waiver, absolutely. Let us know. We can try to get some behind the scenes movement, if you're struggling trying to get some of your assistive technology paid for. Um, the income limit for this particular waiver, ladies and gentlemen, they use 250% of the SSI standard. So the SSI standard right now is 967. So 250% of that is $2,400 and $2,417.50. Still have a $2,000 resource limit. That 2,417.50 is the monthly income limit for individuals that are receiving the lifespan waiver that are connected to Social Security. I'll explain that in a couple slides. Some examples of income that we have to include in this lifespan waiver is if the individual is receiving a DAC benefit from mom and dad, if they're receiving SSDI off their own work record, employment wages, alimony, pension payments. So we have to include all of this. We call it unearned income to come up to that 2,417 amount. Like I said before, there is a $2,000 resource limit. So the next one is pathways to employment. Still another um, Medicaid waiver. You have to be at least 14. The goal of the Pathways to Employment program, or P2E, is your student wants to work. The interesting thing about this is can start at the age of 14. They do have to have Medicaid and meet other financial eligibility, but they have to have the desire to work. With this particular Medicaid waiver, one thing that is included, if you didn't notice on the previous slide, is you get a benefits counselor person. You get me. In addition to support employment and personal care. As you can see on this list, there's also assistive technology. We have financial coaching available, non-medical transportation. There's a little different, comparing it to the lifespan waiver. With this particular waiver, they use a completely different mechanism for determining eligibility. So they use 150% of the federal poverty level. Currently, right now in 2025, the federal poverty level is $15,650, which comes out to $1,956 of total income for the Pathways to Employment program. Again, we have to use unearned income if it's available to them, SSDI or DAC benefits, employment wages, pension payments, similar to the previous waiver to determine eligibility for this program. The next one is LTSS, or long-term supports and services. This is a waiver under the Medicaid program that provides a very customized plan for people who need help with their daily activities, or we call them ADLs. It does provide medical and non-medical care, in a variety of settings. Majority of it would be in the home. Services include meal delivery, self-directed services, and a lot. The list is not conclusive. eligibility for this particular program, they have to be able to unable to perform their daily living activities such as dressing and bathing. And it acts like a voucher. So they can pay for long term care services. They have individuals who are on a list that may be at risk for moving into a nursing home. We try to keep them in their natural family home or out of an institution setting and staying in the community as long as possible for these individuals. These are just some of the individual services under that. You get case management, you can have medical and social day care, respite care, emergency response systems, orthopedics and prostheses. With this program, if you guys look, it's a little similar to Lifespan Waiver because they use the same exact financial standard of 250% of SSI. Once again, this program has to include SSDI payments, DAC benefits, employment income, all that stuff. So between the LTSS and Lifespan, they use the same criteria. Pathways is the only one that uses a different standard of 150% of the federal benefit or the federal poverty level. So Medicaid for workers with disabilities, still eligible for services. It's a completely different application process. Individuals are eligible for Medicaid for workers with disabilities if their income is below 275% of the federal poverty level and they have unearned income of $1,377 per month. No more than that. If they have more than that, depending on how much over they are, we can actually ask the processor to look at there. Can we do a different disregard? Is there something that we can look at? But right now, that limit is that 1377 per month. So how do they interact with each other? So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sharing this form with you. This is what we call in my world, we call this the House of Medicaid. And this House of Medicaid, if you can see within this diagram, everything that is yellow is mandatory. So federal regulations tell us and tells the state if an individual is on SSI, if they went to work and they lost their cash benefit due to earnings, we call that 1619B, they have to still be protected. If you look up there, the fourth door CDB or Child Disability Benefit, they are a mandatory group. If you look to the right of the door, it's a little door by itself, 1915C, HCBS or Home and Community Based Services. If you notice, that is not highlighted in yellow. It is not mandatory that we provide these services under HCBS services. But some of them are connected. If I keep saying it, they're connected through Social Security previously or currently. We are required by law to do this. And it will come more clear in a couple of slides. So for these individuals, I literally broke it down. And Stephanie and everyone else, if you want to take this, make photocopies of it, share it. Because I'm trying to get the word out because the next couple of slides is going to be like, well, wait a minute, you said I'm on this, but how did my son or daughter get on this? This is a very hard topic to talk about because they are looking at removing a portion of this HCBS waiver under the expanded Medicaid. And I'll get to that in a couple of slides. So, for anyone that's on the call and you're saying, my son or daughter is on pathways to employment, I'm on the lifespan waiver, I have LTSS, unless they are connected through those waiver programs under SSI benefits, these numbers in the middle mean absolutely nothing. So I can't see everyone's faces. I probably just confused half of you on the call. Why I have no hair. I'm here to explain it to you guys. So let's look at this. As you can see, I'm going to go back one more. So we have pathways, LTS, lifespan. On the top of this breakdown chart, I have the same three waiver services we just listed. Everyone's listed with their monthly income all the way down. The highlighted X4. Please, if anyone's on the call, I don't have MCO managers. We need to make sure that we as benefits counselors and you guys as family members know which Medicaid group your child and loved one is on. Because if they are an X4 category and all that simply says is expanded Medicaid and they're on the lifespan waiver, their income is not 2004 17 15. Or if they're on pathways, it's that 1956. It's not. LTSS, same thing. They're limited to $1,408.50 a month. So we need to make sure we're educating you guys as teachers, paraprofessionals, family members, MCOs. We need to make sure that we understand that just because you're on a waiver, you may not have the correct waiver limit for services. You may be less than that of that 140850. We can simply run the number, social security number into the system. A lot of times, you guys, if you're on lifespan or pathways to employment, LTSS, say to them, hey, what's my son or daughter's Medicaid group? Can you tell me if they're in an expanded group or are they in a regular group? Are they in a different code? If they're X4, this is where you guys are at. This number will go up. It's based on the federal poverty level. But that X4, this is where it's getting sticky. This is the group they're trying to eliminate. X4, X5, and X6, because it's the expanded Medicaid group. And it's all wrapped around federal funding and federal matching. I know I'm going to have questions at the end of it. I love it. But I just want to give you guys an opportunity to really get a visual that, and they're not telling you guys this. They're just telling you, oh, you're on lifespan waiver. You can earn 2417. You're not. You can only earn 140850. And the sad thing about this, ladies and gentlemen, is that number has to include unearned income. So what if I have a child that's on a DAC benefit from mom or dad that passed away or became disabled and they're getting $1,000 a month? I can now only earn $408.50 a month unless I come up with a Miller's Trust or something else to come up with the how to earn that much money and put that money into a special account. And I can also share this with you guys too, Stephanie. So let's look at this. So what if they're over the allowable income? So individuals have two options. One of them is consistently confusing to families. Um, you'll hear the word Miller's Trust being put out there, QIT, Qualified Income Trust. The interesting thing about a Miller's Trust is it's only for income. So let's say my child is earning over the income limit. I can put the difference into a Miller's Trust or a QIT, and I can use that money to pay for services, can pay for medical bills. Traditionally, a Miller's Trust was used for individuals that were going into nursing homes. The workaround from this is if your child or your student is not in an institutional setting, they do not have a personal needs allowance set to them. So you would work with your attorney once you set this up or your bank and say, I want my personal needs allowance to be $500 a month. That $500 a month you're taking out of the Miller's Trust can pay for the rent, can pay for those dark tickets. So the goal would be to use that Miller's Trust for income, use it because it's irrevocable, because once it's in there, you can't remove it unless it's disability related or other services. Use it just like you would with a regular bank account to allow them to become eligible and maintain their Medicaid and their services that they are receiving. So if they're over resources, so in Delaware, resources and earnings are two different things. So there is a $2,000 resource limit. Um, you can do an irrevocable trust to be eligible for the services. So one of the things that I always tell my families, especially with irrevocable trust, is if you have a complicated situation, you want to make sure that you do seek the advice of an attorney, because it's a legal binding contract. You should consult anybody before establishing any of these trusts. I can give you some names of trustees that I work with. I can't specifically give you one, but sometimes I put them at the top of the list. Um, but it's a good idea to really get all these things set in place, especially if there's a inheritance that's involved. If you're looking at leaving property to your child or your loved one, you always want to seek the advice of an attorney before just doing it on your own. So continuing irrevocable trust. So some of the trusts that we have available in Delaware is a special needs trust, a pooled trust, or commonly known to as the Delaware Care Plan, a burial trust. I know that we don't like to talk about that, but a burial trust is something you put money into, and ABLE accounts. You do not need an attorney to establish an ABLE account. You need about 15 minutes of your time. to set up the Able account. It's about $25 to start it up. There are rules involved. I 100% advise family members to never put income into a Able account. Zero income. You can put income into a burial trust, the care plan, the pool trust, the mills trust, but I never want to see income money from work going into an Able account. So currently in 2025, Able accounts have a $19,000 limit that we can put money into the account. Anyone can fund the Able account up to $19,000 a year. If the individual is not participating in the company 401, the Earns program, or a savings plan, they can deposit an additional $15,650 into the Able account for a total of $34,650 into the Able account. Up to $100,000 can be in the account before SSI will start using the deduction. The interesting thing about the Able account is the individual owns the account. As of January 1st, 2026, they are expanding the age from 26 to 46. This is going to help us really get a lot more individuals with an Able account um, to help save with resources and money. So, what is a QDEE? So, a QDE is qualified disability related expenses. And, ladies and gentlemen, I can be very, very creative when it comes to what is a qualifying disability related expenses. I had a family who was saving money for their child, and the child wanted to go to Disney World. And they said, "Well, how can we use funds in an Able account to go to Disney World?" And I said, "Well, it's an educational trip." "Well, what do you mean? What they're going to Disney World? What are they learning? Learning how to stand in line. They're learning patience. They're learning how to order food. They're learning how to interact with the public." So Able was like, absolutely, it's an educational. Yes, they spent their money, they can go. Absolutely. So it's all how we look and define. It's not a real clear definition of what an educational expense looks like. And this list on the side is not all conclusive. There's other things that we can use when it comes to these particular um, Able accounts. So, guys, I went through that relatively quickly, but I wanted to get back to this slide. I'm sorry, these two slides, and really focus if you guys have any particular questions on these two slides, especially when it comes to this X4 category. And like I said, we're going to have more information tomorrow because they're getting ready to release the information tomorrow with the new COLA increases. But these are I say out of any of the slides that I prepared tonight, these probably be the one that we can really focus on and give parents the information so they have it. Let me see if I can. Can I downsize this?
And just while you're looking at that, I just want to know those of you who are on the Zoom right now, I did put a link in when you have an opportunity. If you can just click the link, it'll just take you to a few questions, ask for your email so that we can update our email list and share any materials out and any upcoming information about anything wonderful that our team is doing.
Absolutely. Appreciate that. So for some reason, it won't let me downsize it so I can see the chat. I wonder if I have to stop sharing.
There's
Are you trying
actually
to